everyone out there in SEC land. Welcome back to the third Saturday in October podcast, where we talk about all things SEC, specifically football, specifically Tennessee and Alabama, because that's where our fandom lies. But we always want this to be an SEC tailgating podcast for the rest of us, because I think that all the conversations about all the teams here in the SEC is what we love to dive into. My name is Chris Murphy. I'm your co-host along with my other fella here, Bradley Minigan. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm good. Well, I don't even know, to be honest with you, more than I think about it. Are we playing football? Are we not playing football? What's going on? This is like, what is even going on? We don't know from day to day if we're going to have fall football or not. So I can't honestly say I'm doing great, because I'm just like walking around on pins and needles all day.
Right. I mean, it really depends on what conference you're in, which your team lies, to know whether you got football this fall or not. Today we're going to talk about the Pac-12 and Big Ten being proactive in postponing their seasons, looking to push college football to the spring. The ACC, Big 12, and SEC still going full steam ahead for fall football. Also, Tennessee came out and said they're banning tailgating on campus for this season. So that hurts my heart, being the SEC tailgate podcast for the rest of it. But we're going to dive into that stuff today, because, Chris, I can't wait to get your perspective on these topics.
Sure, man. Absolutely.
So first, let's talk about the Pac-12 and Big Ten saying, hey, we're out.
This is huge news. Yeah, this is like, I am a bit confused about what happens moving forward, because we haven't had word from other Power 5 conferences at this point.
Right.
We've heard from the SEC that we're still planning on playing. So I'm excited about the possibility of still playing, even if it's just a few conferences playing each other. I still will go back on my thought from a month ago that says, I don't know that we're playing. I don't know that it will work out. My fingers are crossed, and things have been moving in a positive direction over the last few weeks. But with the Big Ten and Pac-12 backing out, I don't know if this is just a sign of things to come for other conferences, and especially the SEC. So confusion, the shrug emoji is what I feel like I've been walking around with for the past couple of weeks. So,
well, Greg Sankey, commissioner of the SEC, when asked about the Pac-12 and Big Ten announcements, they said, what's your response? And he said, I would love to know what criteria, what determining factors they saw to make this decision. And it's the way that I read it, it didn't seem like, a shot across the bow or anything. But I think some people may have seen it that way. I just saw it as, hey, we think we're looking all at the same data. What's the difference?
Sure. And speaking of that, former LSU president, university president, I think it's F. King Alexander is his name. You were talking about the shot across the bow from the SEC to the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. And they asked Alexander, who is now the president of Oregon State, the president of Oregon State, what the Pac-12 saw that the SEC did not. And he kind of responded with sort of a sarcastic, I don't know, reality. So that's an interesting take on that. And so I get it. I think that player and personnel safety should be at the top of the list right now. But with the SEC moving forward, they apparently, like Nick Saban has recently said, that the players are safer with us than they are at home, statistically. So who knows? We're again all over the map. So I don't know what to believe.
Yeah, and I don't know the order of those quotes from Greg Sankey to Alexander to Saban. I don't know if that was the order, but what Saban brought up is really how I've been thinking, in that Saban was saying these players, when they're with us, we kind of know where they are at all times. My old high school football coach wanted all the guys in the school to play football because he knew where they were from 3 o'clock to 6 or 7 in the evening. And then at that point, you got to go home and do homework. So there's not a lot of free time. So there's not time to get into trouble. I see Saban kind of doing the same thing. And if the players are at practice, hanging out with their teammates, the teams are 100 or so players in the SEC. But I think they can do a good job of isolating from everyone else. I think, I think the biggest kind of hole in that are coaches going home to families and families where kids may be going to school because schools have opened up, but they've got so many resources to monitor the student health and coaches' health that I think he may have a point that they're safer there. And I've seen things as crazy as take all the SEC school teams, put them in Atlanta. I don't know where they're going to put them up. Play all the games in Atlanta and really create a bubble like the NBA has done down in Orlando. I don't know if that'll work. They said, look, they're already taking online classes, so they can take these classes anywhere. But my thought is if we can keep people out of the hospitals, and I think, don't quote me on this, I think college students are less likely to be hospitalized for COVID. So if they're not going to be hospitalized, that's the whole reason that we're social distancing and everything. It's not to starve the virus. It's to keep hospitals from being overrun. Let's play football.
Yeah. It's such a, again, I feel like I say this 10 times an episode recently, but it's such a bizarre time that we find ourselves in. And the other thing that we have to say every week as well is that we are for people's safety first. We don't want like us talking about football as a hobby to be a spectator, as a fan, and also just as a, enjoying that. We don't want to enjoy it at the expense of people's safety. We want to make sure that everybody is as safe as possible, but under the umbrella of people taking responsibility for themselves. And then kind of, as you said, that like if you are at school, that they can have eyes on you as to where you are, if you're social distancing the way you're supposed to, if you are following the rules, versus if they were at home, they're not under any sort of rules or regulations. So it would almost be a safer bet for them to be on campus or hid away in some undisclosed location in Atlanta, kind of what you were saying as a bubble. It's an interesting idea. Again, like you're saying, if they can go online to go to their class, they can still meet all the requirements of being a student and then an athlete as well, being at some, high school practice field before they all go play in the Georgia Dome on Saturdays.
Yeah, I agree. It's about safety first, and I'm doing everything I can, not necessarily to keep myself safe, but to keep other people safe. I haven't tested positive. I haven't had any symptoms. And I don't want to be that one that's asymptomatic and passes it along to somebody else who is caring for, maybe delivering groceries for an elderly neighbor or family member. At the same time,
absolutely.
if I were a college athlete, I'd say, hey, if you can prove to me that we can kind of distance ourselves from everybody else, let's go play. I'd want to play. You see lots of players speaking out on social media. I don't know if that's going to make a difference for the the commissioners of the ACC, SEC, and Big 12. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay, so on that note, what are our thoughts that, okay, if everything remains the same, the Big 10 and the Pac-12 are out. The SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12 currently are in and are going to play conference-only games. What happens at the end of a fall season when there's the possibility of other conferences possibly playing in the springtime? Like, how do we how do we give a national champion, or what are we going to do when it comes out of conference play to the postseason?
I mean, with so much talent having graduated last year, from playoff teams, and non-playoff teams, does anybody think they can challenge Clemson? I mean, there's a reason we play the games, but I don't know. I mean, it's theirs to lose this year.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about what they've lost. I don't know enough about what Ohio State has lost. So, everything that I was just kind of hearing, but I'm not really paying attention to anything outside the SEC, is Ohio State seems to be the only ones who can challenge Clemson this year. We wouldn't have that matchup. At the same time, I don't know who the national champions were during World War I. if they crowned it, or they just, they kind of say the national champion of the fall league and the national champion of the spring league.
Yeah,
we may not get that nice distinction this year.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I was thinking kind of on those same lines, that maybe what we would have to do is go back to a pre-BCS era where certain polls, they crowned a champion that other people decided that wasn't the case. And, this is why some teams, including Alabama, can claim certain national titles, and other people think that they shouldn't claim those because of the whoever was handing out those titles. So maybe this is a situation to where somebody like a coach's poll or ESPN or somebody will have to look and say, okay, on paper, these two teams should be playing in this bowl game, and this should have been the outcome, to maybe come up with some sort of writer's beat or beat writers for these various teams where they write in who they think should be the champion. So we've got a wild couple of months ahead of us if we're going to have these three conferences still playing ball.
I do think I have a solution that just came to me.
Let's
just crown UCF as the national champion, and nobody will be upset with that, right?
Sure, no one will have an issue with that at all.
I mean, I'm sure UCF would love it. They've already claimed another national championship, so what's one more?
Yeah, hey, they should make rings for this year too.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get them done. I'm going to claim my own self as the college football national champion. I may not play a lot this year, but I will go ahead and unilaterally decide that I should be the champion.
Well, we can go ahead and crown ourselves as the SEC Tailgating Podcast national champion, because there's not going to be any tailgating at Tennessee this year.
True.
So that was big news that Tennessee said. Not that we were going to be able to get to a tailgate this year, I'm not sure, but they made it official. No tailgating on campus for games. Again, kind of reinstating the fact that they're moving full steam ahead for a season being played in Neyland Stadium this fall. What do you think about no tailgating this year, Chris?
You and I, about this time last year, we went to the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. Yeah. And one of the things that I loved most about that was to see all the traditions of college football. Many traditions.
Tailgating.
Exactly. The many of the traditions that don't exist in the NFL. They are specific to being on a college campus and that sort of lifestyle that comes along with it. And just what you're saying, we saw through the decades how tailgating changed over the years. And so maybe 2020, with the SEC tailgating podcast for the rest of us, we need to reign and usher in the new era of virtual tailgating, where none of us are going to be on campus, but we can do it in this way and maybe start a new tradition that will be housed in the College Football Hall of Fame for years to come.
I can only dream. We are working. We talked about this last week. Working on a kind of a 101 sheet of how to tailgate during a pandemic. So we're starting to work on some of those ideas. Hope to have that in the next week or two. But we will definitely have that before the SEC kicks off September 26th. But it's weird. It's not that. I don't know what normal is going to be like when we're not having to be shut-ins or choosing to be shut-ins.
Right.
However you see that playing out, but it's going to be different. And maybe our grandchildren aren't going to think about it just like we don't think about gas shortages and rubber drives and that sort of thing that our families generations ago, and it's not that far back, had to endure. This is our hopefully once in a lifetime catastrophic event. So
yeah, certainly unique to anything any of us have, unless you're 100 years old. No, I don't think that anything comes close. And even then, it seemed like it was not necessarily, it affected the entire world, but as a pandemic, but certainly a different world that we live in when everything is so connected and we rely so much on travel. Like we have whole economies built around things like college football and vacations and all of that now are in question this year. It's bizarre. Speaking of college football, turning it back around to the SEC, just after we went live last week with the episode, the SEC released its 2 games that everybody will be playing. What do you think about Tennessee and what they pulled?
Ugh. It wasn't going to be easy. Yeah. Playing at Auburn again. It's like, oh man, that couldn't be our home game. But that's going to be tough again. So if we play all these in empty stadiums, how much is home field advantage going to influence? And I think you said last season, home field advantage is equated to about a field goal.
Yeah. According to some betting experts that I have heard talk about it over the years, about a field goal advantage for the majority of teams. Now there's going to be a big difference if it's Tennessee playing homecoming when the opponent usually isn't someone that you feel like it's going to be that big of a deal on taking down. But regardless, 3 points.
How beneficial is it to have a homecoming game when you can't go home to watch the game?
Yeah.
You have to stay home to watch.
It's a home staying game. Exactly.
So, and Auburn's a tough draw. A&M's a tough draw. But we do get to have play A&M in Knoxville. I guess the home field advantage is you don't have to travel. You get to stay in a place familiar. But
you can sleep in your dorm room or wherever they're housed versus at a hotel.
Yeah. I know some schools even put their teams up in a hotel the night before just to give them some quiet from dorm life.
Sure. That makes sense.
But I think We ran a poll on Twitter, and I'm going to pull that up. I think most people were saying Tennessee was going to go 2-2 between Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, and Texas A&M. I personally think there's a possibility of going 3-1, a good possibility of going 3-1. I think, and I'm pulling it up now, I think most people were saying that most people voted that Alabama would go 4-0. That's against Tennessee, Georgia, Kentucky, and Missouri. Chris, what do you think about adding Kentucky and Missouri to the Alabama schedule this fall?
I'm a little confused when I see some of the teams that some teams have to play. And then when I see other teams and who they were given, I just kind of shrug. And I don't know if it's based on the strength of schedule or strength of teams from the opposing side that they're already playing on the schedule. So this year, Georgia and Tennessee being the teams that Alabama would have played regardless of what happened in this pandemic situation. And those are pretty formidable foes. So maybe the idea of Kentucky, Missouri, maybe balancing out the schedule for Alabama when it comes to the strength of play. Maybe that makes sense. But first I saw Missouri and Kentucky and thought, oh, okay. Again, nothing against Missouri or Kentucky, but they've traditionally not been teams that Alabama has had years of issues with, being as diplomatic as possible. And so because of that, I was excited, but confused nonetheless.
Yeah, it's people were saying that LSU got off easy too. It's the SEC, and none of it's going to be easy.
Sure.
I mean, Arkansas still hates Tennessee for 1998. Tennessee had was backed into a corner. Arkansas just had to run out the clock. I think just get a first down, and they fumbled the ball. Then Tennessee recovered, scored, won. I believe that put them in the SEC championship game, maybe against Auburn, and ended up winning a national championship. So, I mean, Arkansas is going to come out ready to fight.
Sure.
So, I don't know.
I'm disappointed that we won't see our Lane Kiffin Tennessee rematch, or I guess not a rematch, but
I saw something and it made a good point. Tennessee Auburn used to be a big rivalry, I think until about 91, and then Ole Miss and Tennessee played every year for I think about 30 years, maybe longer. And so it's like, if we could add two more SEC games, those would be great games to add just because of those old storylines. Yeah. We got one of them, and I'll live with that. So, we'll live with it. I'd love to. I mean, I can't wait to see how this thing plays out week by week. And I'm trying to tell myself positive thoughts of we will have a college football season. We will have a college football season, even if it's only the SEC. Right. That's all I need.
Sure. Well, we will continue to come here each week and talk about the latest developments. And it seems like in no other time in history have the latest developments been more eye-catching, just because of it can change the whole landscape of what college football looks like at a moment's notice. So we'll keep looking for it and reporting it here on the third Saturday in October podcast. If everything holds, I believe that from today we're 43 days from kickoff.
I've got everything crossed that I can cross.
Yep, crossing the cross. Yep.
We also want to know what you think. Do you think we're going to have a college football season? Now hearing from the Pac-12 and Big Ten, be sure to let us know at TSIO Pod on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Also, you can find our podcasts we do Zoom recordings. That's what we're doing right now. And we post them on YouTube. Find us on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you enjoy podcasts. But since we can't have a tailgate in Knoxville this season on campus, we're going to tailgate virtually. So be sure to hang out with us on social media, on the internet. And until next time, roll Vols.
Roll Vols, baby.